Hey, it's jflahiff, and welcome to a new year. Just starting off this new year, I plan on doing a podcast every other day. Maybe not quite yet, but I want to start getting that to that point where I'm doing a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then eventually maybe every day. Today I want to talk with you about a great experience I had yesterday. So yesterday was sprint planning on my really large-scale project. I'm using Agile, obviously, because that's my deal. We're using Scrum because that happens to be what this team uses. There are 4 teams, and we were having some trouble coordinating with these teams. Actually, we started out with 3 teams. We added another team, and that really kind of broke our scalability model. So if you think you're doing it okay and you've got 3 teams and you're going to say, okay, let's branch out to 5, think about it twice because you might be in for a bit of a shock. When we added the 4th team, our scheduling of scrums didn't work anymore, and our sprint planning didn't work anymore. The problem we ran into was there are cross-team people. This is Agile in an enterprise. Come on, folks. We're not a software development company. We're an IT shop within, well, the people I'm dealing with are an IT shop within the organization that does something else for its primary product. So people don't have the luxury of being dedicated to just one product or just dedicated to one project. They are across multiple projects. In this particular case, they're across 4 of my projects, a lot of folks. So what would happen is if we had sprint planning on multiple days, then we wound up with those people being completely unproductive from a working software perspective for 4 days. And if you are in a 2-week sprint, like we use a 2-week sprint, that's half your sprint right there. Push, it's all gone. So we had to do something different. So I said, you know what I'm going to try? I'm going to try this. We'll see if it works. If it doesn't, we'll do something else, but at least we can learn from it, inspect, adapt, move forward. So what we did was I said, okay, let's have all of our demos on one day. We'll do them just sequentially. And then on Friday, and then on the following Monday, we will do our sprint planning together. Now, you have to remember, we're talking 4 teams, and these are pretty big teams, so we're pushing 10 on each team at least. Probably closer to 12. I know that breaks the Scrum model, but you know what? It's what we have to do. So not everyone's completely dedicated, so we just do what we do. So planning session, the first one went okay, but we had a bunch of things to get caught up on. So that was the very first one of the year. So yesterday was the second one, because we're on a 2-week sprint cycle, so we did our second one. And it went amazing. I was so excited. So let me just tell you a little bit about what we did, how we did it, and what made it work really well, and some of the real interesting benefits that you can get from it. So the general flow of the day was 1, meet together as a big group. 2, break out into smaller groups. 3, come back together as a big group and report out. So this was to talk about what we plan on doing and share across teams. This opened up, broken out into your teams was so that you could go and discuss it with your teams and elaborate the tasks, pick your stories, blah, blah, blah. And then coming back together was to commit to each other that this is what we're going to do and these are the things that we're committing to for this iteration. So here's what happened. We started out by talking about the themes for the sprint, and I'll talk with you in another podcast about themes and why they're so important. But we talked about the themes for each team and the goals associated with that theme. So the teams broke out for a second. I gave them like 15 minutes. It wound up being closer to half an hour because some of the teams hadn't talked about it really at all. And what I wanted them to do was to not only talk about what their theme was for this sprint, but what their theme was for the last sprint as well, and whether they met those commitments or not. So it was kind of a dual purpose time. So they broke out, they came up with themes, they came back together. They came back together and shared their themes. So one team would say, here's my theme, we're going to be developing these services, and it's kind of a hodgepodge of things, but this is kind of our common denominator among those things. Another one said, well, we're going to be finishing up a bunch of things that we didn't finish in the last one because we just had these impediments that we ran into and couldn't get some stuff. Another one, this was my favorite one, they actually had a catchy theme for theirs. They said their theme was the junction. So it was the project junction where everything was coming together. So their theme was Conjunction Junction. We played the little Conjunction Junction theme from Schoolhouse Rock and had some fun with that. Good laughter across the whole room. But they talked about those themes, and they talked about the goals associated with it. So the theme was junction. What's the junction? But then they talked about what the goals were that were associated with that. So we plan on completing these particular features, and we plan on integrating these pieces so that we can actually see an end-to-end flow. This is an EDI project, so an end-to-end flow of the EDI from one system all the way through the back end and back out to the front end system. Again, just talking about what the goals were. Every team talked about their goals. When they were done talking about their theme and their goals, each team, when they were up there, talked about, okay, these are the things that I see, that we see as a team that are cross-team interdependent. So for the team that was doing the end-to-end flow, we depend on these particular services, an ID service and these different calls that they have to make to back-end systems. I'm trying not to be specific to this project. I just want to be general for you. So that you can apply it maybe to your own project. But so there's the back-end calls that they need, but other projects are going to need too. So we called those common systems or common themes and cross-project themes, and we put them on a board, right, on one of those giant sticky notes, and we wrote them all down up there. And so they would talk about that. Then their peers would pepper them with questions. And you never know if it's really going to work or not. And it really did. They actually did ask all the questions, and they were really digging in, and they were interested in what the other team was doing and how they were making it happen, and what were those cross-team things. And they brought out several things that were unique and we hadn't thought of until that point. So it was awesome. They really got into that discussion and cooperation that needs to happen in Agile projects. It was very cool. So they talked about all those things. We wrote them all down, and then they broke out. So that beginning part took hour and a half to 2 hours, and that was because nobody had really gone through and thought about the theme for the next iteration. For this iteration. So then they broke out into their sub-teams. And what we did was they broke out in the room. So we had one big room, really big room, and there were about 40 people in the room, probably 20 to 30 people on the phone. And there were several ancillary people who came and went during the calls as well. This is a big group. So what I did was I had them break out into corners of the room, 1, 2, 3, 4 corners of the room. And 3 of the teams had their own projectors, and all the teams had their own conference phone and conference number. We kind of grabbed a phone here and there and made it happen, and people brought the projectors up. So that was really cool, and I'm going to post a picture. Hopefully it's down there and you can see it right now, of the room with the lights were out pretty much, and the projectors were going, and people were hanging out. And the real benefit that this brought the team was not only did it get rid of that cascading, cross-team people are busy for 4 days in a row, but it really allowed a synergy that I was hoping would happen, but you never know if it's really going to happen or not. But there were things like there was one guy, more than one guy actually, but one guy I remember seeing him do this. He was standing between 2 teams and talking with both of them, oh yeah, so I'm going to give you can have like 14 of my hours, and yeah, I can do that task and that one, but that one's too much. And then he's talking to this team over here, and he's one of those shared people, and he's balancing between the 2 teams. It was fantastic. Really, really was an amazing way to get that energy going. And there were, we had our systems engineers that were floating between the different groups and talking with them about the different design aspects that we were running into that they needed help on, and just solving problems right there. It was really good, really good. On the other hand, there was this 4th team. Now this 4th team had 3 people in the room. The other teams had most of their people in the room and maybe 1 or 2 people on the phone. They were the opposite of that. They had most of their people on the phone, and there were 3 people in the room. I think there were 3, maybe 4. 4, actually, there were 4. 2 of those people were actually cross-project people, and so the other 2 were there, and it was difficult for them. They didn't use a projector because they were a small enough group that they used a shared meeting, Microsoft Live Meeting. Everybody was using Live Meeting for those people who were off-site. And for the big session, the morning session, we had a panorama camera, so we could see the whole room if you were online, and it would change who was speaking. A really cool thing. I'll tell you about that later. So this group that had the challenge, though, they really needed it quieter. Because all their people were on the phone, they really were struggling and were getting kind of frustrated by the end of the morning. Because for that hour and a half that they were spending before lunch, trying to discuss and select stories and do tasking, they were really having a struggle because they were all on the phone, and it was too noisy in the room. It was really noisy. Which is good when you're in the room, but it's bad when you're on the phone. So what they did was after lunch, they found another room on a different floor. We were on the 16th floor. They went to the 12th floor. Said, the 2 people who were floating people said, I can just run up and I can be a cross project. Came back from lunch and I was like, that really goes against what we're trying to do here with having everyone do this in the same day, especially for those poor people who are cross project, right? They need to be on multiple things. So what I did was I went and got facilities to give me the room next door. And it was a small room that actually had a built-in projector. It was a PC training room. And I went down and talked to those people and said, I totally appreciate that it's too noisy in there for you with all these people on the phone. So here's what I've done. I've got you this room. You can go in there. You can close the door. It'll be quiet, but you're close so that people can come talk to you and you can go talk to people. And no argument. None whatsoever. They went right up after, they wrapped up what they were doing and came right up. Got right back to work, and within a minute or a minute and a half of being up there, there was literally someone walking in the room going, hey, I need to know how much time you're going to be able to commit to this particular task. Oh, great, okay. Within a minute and a half, that move paid for itself by that collaboration that wouldn't have happened if they weren't just sitting right there. Yeah, they might have been able to get them on instant messaging or done something, run down, but it wasn't as easy as just getting up, walking over and doing it. So it was a great time. It wasn't perfect. I'll go over some of the lessons learned maybe in the next podcast, but I have to get out of here. The last thing that we did, and I want to share this part with you, was we all came back together and we gave a fist of 5 commitment on whether we believed we could do it or not. We got some 3s, mostly 4s. I don't think I got any 5s, but that's okay. It's a big project that's challenging, so I appreciate that people are like, I don't know. And then what we did was we retrospected the day. We retrospected what happened that day, and to my great surprise, most of the feedback was positive. There were a few suggestions. Let's have the room set up beforehand, and there were a few things, and I'll go over those, like I said, in another podcast, but so you can learn from those lessons learned. But by and large, people said, this was great. I had one Scrum Master, I'll leave you with this thought. One Scrum Master said, at the beginning of the day, I seriously doubted that this was going to work at all. And now I think this was the best planning session that we have ever had. And if we'd been doing this all along, we'd be done by now. And I said, we wouldn't really be done by now, but thank you for the compliment. So I want to hear what you're doing. Please comment about what I'm doing. Tell me if you've tried something similar. Just make your comments right down below. I really want to hear from you, know what you're doing, and hear what challenges you run into. Maybe I can learn from you. If you're learning from me, let me know. I'd love to hear about that. So anyway, I'm going to run. I have a meeting I need to get to, and then I'll do another one of these about some of the lessons learned and some of the other pieces that I said that I promised I would give you podcasts on. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.